Welcome back, fellow fans of the written word. And there are quite a few tropes or story archetypes, if you want, that I can't get enough of. One of these is a Robinsonade. It is named, of course, after the famous Robinson Crusoe titular novel by Daniel Defoe. It's also considered to be one of, if not the first true novel written in what we know as modern English. It's also inspired by a semi-real life castaway by the name of Alexander Selkirk. And it is a story of essentially the trope itself. It's man or woman versus nature. A character is stranded somewhere by their own, trying to survive in isolation from civilization, and they try to build a life, or they try to build a life for themselves while also trying to escape their situation. It's usually a uninhabited island or a planet type of trope, but it doesn't have to be. So these are four that kind of shaped me who I am as a reader. And let's start with The Mysterious Island by Jules Verne. And before I say anything about the novel, a little bit of context. My grandmother had an amazing home library, and I lived with her for a while when I was little, and this is where I truly became a fan of adventure novels. I had no concept of old versus new. I just read. I had all these Jules Verne and H.G. Wells novels. They were in Russian, they were translated to Russian, very old editions. And Jules Verne is a very, very important author to me for two reasons. Because his work sparked my love for science fiction, and it also sparked my just lifelong respect and love for the written word as it is. As for the novel, it was published in 1874, and the book is essentially, it's a castaway story. So during the American Civil War, 5 prisoners and they escape a Confederate prison in a balloon, and a storm takes them, carries them on a deserted island, and they are forced to build a mini civilization there using their scientific prowess. And of course, as it is always with characters that Jules Verne wrote, all of his heroes are very, very crafty, very industrious. So they tame the island, they build all kinds of technological marvels of the time. And and they also work on trying to escape, of course. Also, I'd like to note that it's currently in public domain, so if you want to read it, it's freely available on Project Gutenberg, which I highly recommend because they take public domain works and they reformat them, they make sure they work on e-readers and phones. It's not just a pure conversion, they really curate their stuff. And you can also download it on Amazon for free. I don't know how the edition of Amazon looks like, but you can do that as well. Number 2 is Hatchet by Gary Paulson. And this is a YA novel that I have not revisited since I was a teen, but nevertheless it left quite a lasting impression on me. It's about a 13-year-old boy, and he's lost in the northern Canadian wilderness, and he was traveling there to visit his father on a light plane, and the plane crashes, and only he survives. The pilot dies, and he only starts out with a titular hatchet. It's all he has. So he tries to survive, to retrieve some of the stuff from the plane, tries to escape, and There are also sequels, but I haven't read them because I'm not very interested into the revisiting that whole setup, because I read comments on it that it's literally the same book over and over again, which I'm not really for, because there's this strong element of coming of age story, and I don't think you can redo it with the same character in the same circumstances. It just doesn't work. It won several awards, it's held in high regard, and I believe it's even a part of a school curriculum in Canada. Good stuff. Now for number 3, The Martian by Andy Weir. And this is a relatively recent and very lauded book. Comparatively to the rest of my list, it's very recent. I first fell in love with it in audio form when it came out, and there are 2 reasons for that. The format of the narrative, it's tightly tied to the audio logs, so in universe delivery of the stories via audio logs that Mark, the main character, is recording to send to NASA or to whoever finds his logs. And it works really well as an audiobook, and when you pair it with a really masterful narration of R.C. Bray, the audiobook narrator, it truly comes to life. I prefer it to the film. The film was really good. I was very pleasantly surprised with it. It's mostly one-to-one, mostly. And the story is, we have Mark Watney, he's an astronaut, and he is a part of a crew to the Mars, a space mission. And after they land, Martian weather gets really rough, and the mission has to be abandoned, and he is wounded and left on the planet presumed to be dead. But he manages to survive, but he doesn't have a way to communicate with the mission control, so he has to use the Martian habitat they have built, gear they have scattered around, and stuff like that to survive until next mission, which is, years and years away. And it's a really good book. I highly recommend it. I know some of the people found it quite dry, or the character too stoic, which I found to be a very odd comment. I found him to be a character who copes with his situation with humor, but he's not an overly quippy person. Because there are characters, particularly in popular culture, where all they do is quip, quip, quip. And I don't think quipping is a substitute for a character, for a personality, and I don't think Mark Watney is just a quip machine. No, he has a very cheerful demeanor, which is why he was a very valuable part of the crew, because he was the glue who held the mission together. So I thought it really worked, and I really like the character. Number 4, The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon by Stephen King. And right from the start, I know that it is considered to be a lesser King work, but I personally never thought so. It came out in 1999, I think. And it's a story about a 9-year-old girl called Trisha. She goes on a hike on the Appalachian Trail with her mother and her brother, and she gets lost. He veers off the path when going, I think, on a bathroom break, and just gets hopelessly lost in the wilderness. And the reason why I like it is it manages to convey this sense of isolation and crushing distance. All of these feelings of character feeling alone on a deserted island, but at the same time not really being that far away from the civilization. But she's very young and she's lost, and the prose and the narrative manages to accomplish the same thing that other stereotypical Robinsonade stories do, which I think is absolutely marvelous, because there are little things such as she has this little radio she has with her, and she tries to save her batteries, but the radio, the only radio station she can catch here in the wilderness, even the commercials and the baseball game she's listening to, it keeps her sane, it keeps her going because she doesn't feel alone. That's very important, I think. I mean, if you are like me, being alone in your head, it's not always a good thing. So I don't know. I'm a pretty, I don't know, solitary person. I don't mind being alone, but if I'm alone on a longer periods of time, or if I'm just alone at home, just having something in your earbuds, like a podcast, an audiobook, a radio station, music, it helps. And the minimalism of the story, enough about me, is actually quite effective. And for a Stephen King book, it's like a novella length. It's very short, and it doesn't go overboard. So it's a thumbs up by me. So thank you for watching this and for your continued support. And thank you, Ethan, for your Patreon donations. They're really appreciated. See you next time, guys, with another Wheel of Time video. Bye-bye.